Welcome into the Eyes on Texas multicast, our bi-weekly coverage of the Texas Longhorn football team. And the Longhorns are 7-1. They're number 6 in the coaches poll. They're number 7 in the AP poll. And the month of November is here. Is it going to be a November to remember for the Longhorns? Or will it be a November to forget? Longhorns have their destiny in their control. And we're coming to you live from the capital city of the great state of Texas, overlooking downtown Austin and the University of Texas. Welcome to the bi-weekly broadcast that understands the pride and tradition of the Texas football program will never be entrusted to the timid of the week. We are a product of the Republic of Football on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network and powered by our presenting partners at Grande Equipment and our 4 other founding partners. We appreciate them so very much. I'm Aaron Hogan, morning show host at The Horn here in Austin, 25 years doing morning sports radio here in the great state and the capital city of the great state. He is the senior writer at Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, our man, Mike Craven. Mike, how are you? We're still not in our luxurious studios. We're doing some remodeling, so we're doing the Zoom thing on this Monday, but we're still talking Texas football, and it should be an exciting run to the finish line.
Yeah, doing good. It's crazy that it's week 10 of the college football season, 4 games left for most teams in the country. So kind of the best part of the year, in my opinion. November's the best sports month of the year. Thanksgiving's coming. So got a little cold. So doing pretty good.
You got a little cold. Okay. Well, you were at the Rice game last week, so we'll talk about that coming up. That had to be exciting. I'm sure the crowd was a frenzy with what was going on down in Houston in the medical center. Good game, though, Tulane and Rice. But it is Monday when we record our first episode of the week on the Eyes on Texas multicast. The multicast keeps you on top of all things Texas football. We call it a multicast because, of course, it's available to watch bi-weekly. It's also on the Dave Campbell's Texas Football YouTube channel, the Horn FM's YouTube channel in Austin, or around the world at hornfm.com. It's also available for download through iTunes and Spotify. So multiple ways to listen and watch. Also multiple ways to follow the show on social media. Twitter, it's Eyes on Texas FB. On Instagram, it's Eyes on Texas Pod. And now on Facebook, we are live at Eyes on Texas Podcast, coming off a 35-6 Texas victory. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll recap it coming up because the Longhorns had plenty of good. There's still red zone and goal line and inside the 5-yard line issues for this program and this team. They're still going with their backup quarterback into this week, and they've got a huge contest in the Big 12 this week with K-State. So as you know, if you've been watching and playing along with us here on the Eyes on Texas multicast, we break it into 4 quarters. Coming up in our first quarter, we're going to talk about the game itself. The Longhorns get the victory. And we'll run through the good, the bad, and the ugly here from Steve Sarkisian, his thoughts on the game, some highlights from the game here from Maalik Murphy, the Longhorn starting quarterback in that game, who made his first start of his career. Also in our second quarter, we'll talk about the current big picture of football with the Longhorns sitting at number 7 in the country in the AP. Tomorrow, actually, when this thing launches, Mike, on Tuesday, the first college football playoff rankings will be unveiled. So we'll have that to talk about. And then halftime, we got some great stuff coming. We're going to hear one of the Longhorn captains was asked today who the toughest player on the Texas football team is. Mike, I don't know if you saw that or you could guess who that is. Might surprise you. Also, they're going to honor a lifetime Longhorn legend coming up at the game on Saturday. We'll have that coming up in our halftime segment, in addition to our look around the National Football League and the Longhorns that are shining on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays in the National Football League. And our third quarter, we're going to look at the Big 12 itself, because as we sit here today, Mike, 5 teams are tied for the top spot at 4-1. Some huge games coming up on Saturday, so we'll look at the Longhorns in the Big 12 in the future. And then, of course, on our fourth quarter, it'll be the final 4 questions around the Big 12 and around college football that we have not gotten to in the first 3 quarters. So we're going to get this thing cranked up. It's going to be fun. But, Mike, before we tell you about our presenting partner, let me get your thoughts on the overall game itself. Longhorns win it 35-6. We'll run through it, talk about how the Longhorns got to that victory with the backup quarterback. But from your vantage point, what were your takeaways from the Longhorn victory over BYU?
You know, it's always good when you win by 29 points and feel like you didn't play that good of a game. And I think that's where Texas is right now, where, probably nobody's really satisfied from that win. I think the players think they could have played better. I know the coaches thought they could execute better. I know the fans thought that maybe they were a little lackluster at times, but the defense was excellent. Didn't give up a touchdown. We saw flashes from Maalik Murphy and that arm talent and what he's able to do. It was his first start ever in college. There was going to be some mistakes. There was going to be some poor reads. But overall, I think you win 35-6 at home. You stay in the Big 12 hunt. You win the turnover battle, play good defense. As I mentioned, I think overall it was a good performance and one that springboards you into what is going to be the real exam for this quarterback and that team.
Yeah, K-State this Saturday. That's been announced as an 11 a.m. kick. We'll talk about it. We're going to Sark talk about it because we will recap the BYU game. But, that game was BYU was no match for Texas. And I think you said it right on. To win by 29 points, a game that could have been a lot wider had you punched some balls in from the goal line, which continues to be a struggle for the Longhorns. Longhorns are currently 120th in the country in red zone touchdown offense in the country. They're pretty damn good in every other phase, Mike. They do a lot really well. Complementary football, offense, defense, special teams. But man, can you imagine where this team would be if they? And it's pretty simple for me. If they had been able to work on these red zone issues or known about them or fix them sooner, they might be the number one team in the country because they win the Oklahoma game if they are better in the red zone. They don't lose that game if they don't go 1 for 4 in the red zone and turn the ball over and get stopped at the goal line. They win that football game, and they're sitting here an 8-0 undefeated team. But those continue to persist, so we'll talk about it. You want to tell you before we get launched that our presenting partners at Grande Equipment, my great friend Wes Murray and his team and his son Weston and the entire crew at Grande, understand that your reputation is all that you have. When it's time for a project, large or small, that's how Grande has operated. That's been their mission statement for 31 years. They are not in the equipment business. They are in the relationship business. When you get you need the right piece of equipment or lots of pieces of equipment, heavy equipment for your project, they get you what you want. They'll get it to you quickly without hassles and uncertainty. It'll be job site ready and ready to go. And they partner with you all the way through the finish line of that project. It's going to be, their job's not done until your job is done on time and on budget. They got, as an independent equipment dealer, they've got manufacturers and can get equipment from all the big names: Caterpillar, John Deere, Komatsu, Volvo, and more. Heavy equipment sales and rentals at Grande Equipment and grandeequipment.com. Also have a great new energy sector supporting solar projects all over the country and now all over the world. Grande is your international independent dealer. Find them at grandeequipment.com. That's grandeequipment.com, all one word. Remember, Grande doesn't overpromise, they over-deliver. All right, Mike Craven, let's get into this game. 35-6. We went a little bit of an overview. Can we see some of the highlights here? Nolan Hogan, our digital producer there with the it's cold outside in Austin. I'm sure it is all over most of our viewing area. Temperatures dropped into the 40s. It's breezy, so the skull cap is going. But can we play the Xavier Worthy punt return? This was really a big play in the game. Mike, when you have a backup quarterback in the game, when the game starts, you don't know how it's going to go. But what you do know is all three phases have to step up and rally around a backup quarterback. And to see this kick off a punt return, we've been waiting for Xavier Worthy to break one. See if we can play this, Nolan. The punt return that put the Longhorns' first 7 points on the board, and it came, as you'll see in this highlight, as an untouched situation. Pretty incredible. Here's the punt return from ABC TV on Saturday.
Game, and this one hung up in the wind a little bit. Here's Worthy, makes the first man miss. Straight ahead past the 40. Kicker to beat. There he goes. Worthy making a house call on a punt return. Xavier Worthy.
All right, there it was. Touchdown, Worthy. The only thing that nearly touched him was the cannon when it went off. Scared him, I think, when it blasted as he crossed the goal line. That was impressive, Mike, to see that. And I think it was at that moment that I initially thought that something we talked about last week in both of our episodes. BYU is not very fast. They're not a very fast team foot speed wise, and it showed up in that one punt return. He didn't get touched on a punt return. The blocking was really good. We'll hear Sark talking about it coming up, but overall team speed was glaring on that play and really throughout the football game.
On the preview episode midweek last week, I asked if we had any evidence that Xavier Worthy was good at returning punts, and he went out and returned a punt for a touchdown that next week. You're right. I mean, anytime that you have a backup quarterback in there, special teams defense needs to step up. And, Xavier's been one of the better players on this team for 3 years, and he continues to add, new wrinkles and new facets to his football game. That's going to make him, a first-round draft pick in a very loaded wide receiver group this year. Agreed.
Well, then, of course, the Longhorns added another Jonathan Brooks touchdown. Their defense was throwing a blanket over BYU and Keaton Slovis in that offense. And there was a moment, where Maalik Murphy threw that pass you can't throw. Threw an interception, really bad throw. Sark said afterwards that, he kind of panicked a little bit, but there also was a receiver that's supposed to be an outlet receiver that wasn't there. And I think what I saw on that, and then listening to Sark, is, they did one of those ghost pressures where they brought a lot of guys at the line of scrimmage. And I think a young quarterback, Mike, thought, you know what? They're bringing the blitz. They're bringing the house. I got to get this ball out quick. And when he did that, the defensive player that dropped back into coverage, I think Maalik thought he was coming. He didn't. Threw it right to him. And that's just a young quarterback that's playing his first, seeing his first live competition since he's in high school. not wearing a green jersey where you can't hit them. I mean, you're playing football now. And that was just one of those throws that a young quarterback's going to make. And you kind of got to deal with it.
Yeah, he kind of struggled a little bit when he faced pressure. On PFF, he had a 90.8 rating. When the pocket was clean, it was 21.7 when he was under pressure. And so, when he had guys in his face, whether real or imagined, things sped up for him. And that's the difference between practice and the football field. It's the difference between the spring game and week 9 of a college football season. He's definitely going to see it against Kansas State. Stuff happens fast. You start seeing some ghosts out there, some creeper pressures, as Dave Aranda and Baylor likes to call them. And, when he was able to have time and the offensive line protected him, he was really good on the day. And when he got sped up a little bit and was hurried and felt some pressure, he struggled a little bit. You hope those are just 1 week situational cues that he can go and fix in practice and watch on tape and understand how to correct.
Agree with that very much. And so that was the first interception. They got to 14-0 on the Jonathan Brooks touchdown. And then the second interception, or the second turnover, came on another blitz, right? Texas got down inside the red zone where they've struggled this year. We know that. And they got under center, which I think if you see Texas get under center, whether it's Quinn Ewers or Maalik Murphy, something's up. When Texas gets under center is when we've seen them throw the halfback, the receiver passes. And I think, BYU was keen to that. They realized, wait a second, quarterback rarely under pressure or under center with Texas. He's under center. Let's be alert. And they just brought a blitz. I mean, they brought a jailhouse blitz and got to it was going to be that little swing play where Xavier Worthy comes in motion, but then stops right before he gets to the quarterback, goes back the other way, play action pass and swing it right out to Xavier Worthy with a blocker in front. We saw him against Oklahoma State run that play. And instead, BYU jailhoused it. It's a turnover. You put the ball on the ground, you turn it over. That's the first of the red zone issues Texas had. So instead of going up 21-0, you're still at 14-0. And this is what BYU did. I think it's what K-State will do in every team that Texas plays. They're going to try to keep this game, within reach by playing bend but don't break defense and forcing some turnovers. So at that point, I think in the building, Mike, DKR, there was some concern that, okay, well, we got a quarterback that's thrown an interception. He's fumbled the ball. Now what are we going to do? Right before the half, this is when you have a young quarterback, you're going to deal with the bad, but also the good. Let's see this, Nolan. This is the highlight of the Adonai Mitchell touchdown pass, where this is what you love about him, to be able to flick the ball 40 yards right down the hash mark. He made a great read. Once he read the safety, he was going to take the out cut that Adonai gave him. He threw the ball into the bucket. Here's the highlight from ABC, the touchdown pass that made it 21-0 to A.D. Mitchell.
Murphy throws a deep ball into the end zone. He's got Mitchell, and it's caught. Adonai Mitchell with the Texas touchdown.
All right, so there it is. Nice pass, Mike. Drop it. I mean, but time, you kind of looked like was he going to have enough time, but the recovery speed of the safety was a problem, and that made it 21-0. I think at that point, no matter what was going to happen the rest of the way, you felt pretty good about Texas winning this game to get up 3 scores in the first half. They go on to win it 35-6. So the reason we played those for you, the good with the special teams and talking about and showing you the good, bad, and what comes with a young quarterback.
Yeah, it felt like Texas found the recipe of how they're going to have to succeed moving forward. You're going to have to go play action over the top, use Maalik Murphy's big arm. He's like Joe Milton, and that he has kind of like a Paul Bunyan-esque arm and ability to throw the football in a way that just most people can't. So, you get an Xavier Worthy over the top and A.D. Mitchell over the top. You would imagine the vertical game is pretty good. You got to rely on Jonathan Brooks in the running game. Jaden Blue had a big run. He had over 40 yards, kind of felt like a coming out party a little bit for him. Jonathan Brooks was on the field 32 times. He touched the ball on 20 of those snaps, and he's been 98 yards or more in 6 straight games. He had, he's 3 yards away from having 6 straight 100-yard games. He had 99 against Houston, 98 against BYU. So he's essentially been, at the century marker above, since he's been the starter. And so you're going to run the football. You're going to take deep shots. You're going to win on special teams, and then you play defense and don't let any touchdowns happen. So it felt like it's not going to be pretty. It may not be as enjoyable as it would otherwise, but this is how Texas is going to have to get past the Ewers injury and ride this thing out through the regular season, probably.
Yeah, and we'll obviously talk about coming up in our third quarter, more specifically about Kansas State, the job they present. They are 6-2, but 4-1 like Texas in the Big 12. They've been red hot here in the month of October into November. Can we hear Sark? You just heard Mike Craven's recap of the game and how Texas will win. Here is Sark from his Monday news conference as we drop this thing on a Tuesday. His thoughts on the overview, what he liked and what needs work.
Offensively, I thought we found a way to create some explosive plays. 6 of 11 on third down was a real positive for us. But we can't afford 2 turnovers, every week. And so we've got to take care of the ball. And then 2 of 5 in the red zone isn't good enough. And so especially when you're 0 for 3 on first and goal scenarios. And so to me, that's a byproduct of making sure that we're dialed in on the details of the game plan, the execution of it all, the physicality that is needed. And so we got to get back to it, because we had opportunities in that game for that game to really go a different direction in our favor. We didn't capitalize. And so we're going to need to perform better in all 3 phases, most notably in some of those key areas offensively, to continue on the mission that we're on.
All right, continue on that mission. One other from Sark, and obviously in a 29-point victory that you just heard Sark say with some lack of turnovers and check the ball a little better and score at the red zone. This could have been a 50-point victory for Texas against a 5-2 football team with your backup quarterback. That's the optimistic part. But here's Sark being realistic about where they are. Goal line offense, red zone offense. They had 2 tries within the 10-yard line spot in that second half and didn't score on either of them. BYU, like Oklahoma did in the Cotton Bowl, got the stoning of Texas at the goal line. Then Texas came back down and still couldn't score from the 2-yard line. Here's Sark on, at this point, you got to keep working at it and got to be better inside the 5-yard line.
Well, I'm pushing our guys hard. Like I said, I think that's my job as a coach, is to push our players to be the best that they can be individually, and then to push the units on our team to be the best that they can be collectively. And I think there's a standard of offense that our guys have established here of the quality of play that we play with. There's a level of physicality that we play with. There's a level of speed that we play with. And there's a level of intricacy to which we play with the shifts and the motions and those things. And so when we don't meet those expectations and when we don't play to that standard, okay, my job is A, to make sure that we're aware of that, and then B, how are we going to fix that? And sometimes you have to get their attention to do that. And so that was this morning, very candidly. I think I got their attention, and we need a really good week of practice. We need a hard-nosed week of practice. We need great preparation so that we can go out and play really good football against a really good team on Saturday.
Red zone.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say red zone offense comes down to a power running game and playmaking in the passing game. And right now, Texas's run game is really good, but you watch Jonathan Brooks, and it's not necessarily you hand him the ball and then he pounds straight into the offensive line and gets those tough yards. He almost is like Le'Veon Bell-ish in a way where he's pretty patient. He sees a hole, he picks through it. That kind of running style struggles on the goal line when you're facing 8, 9, 10-man boxes. And Texas just hasn't found the Rashawn Johnson or even a Bijan Robinson kind of to be the power running game. And so then it comes down to being really creative and being playmakers in the passing game, whether that be your quarterback getting off script and making some plays or your wide receivers just getting open. The window is tightened. The time to get the ball out tightens. The decision-making has to be quicker. And we saw that even with Ewers in the game that Texas was struggling with a backup quarterback. It serves to reason that it's going to struggle even more. And I think the biggest point of that is you saw the play calling Sark was getting into to try to create points. Like, he knows it. They weren't just lining up and trying to go score. They were getting very innovative in some of those goal line goals because he's trying to scheme his way. He's trying to chalk his way into touchdowns because he doesn't feel like the power running game and then the playmaking and the passing game is up to par. He's trying to compensate for that with the scheme.
Yeah, the first trip inside the 10, that was the fumble right in the first half. That was the jailhouse blitz for BYU. They were trying to get it to X-Man on a play action and long developing play as far as that goes, and BYU kind of bum rushed it, forced the turnover. Then in the second half, the 2, if you go back and document the plays, Mike, and it's interesting that you just said what you said on the heels of Sark, because Sark does sound like he's challenging the players. Like, the plays are there, guys. We've got to execute them better. He's not taking it on him. And I know we get a lot of texts on our show in the mornings, and I'm sure you hear about it, that it's predictable play calling. I would disagree with those people because what I saw was he was trying to get X-Man and fly motion on the first one. It turned into a fumble. Then, they went to Red Cat. If you remember the first time they got denied by BYU, they went to the Savion Red package on a 3rd and 1 from outside of the 10-yard line and got a first down. Then they went to it again. Then they went to it again. They just kept running it. And then, the third time they did it, it lost 2 yards. So Sark kind of, reverse course. I do think that Red Cat, the Savion Red Wildcat package can work, but at some point you have to hand that ball off. He's going to have to do something different than just trying to find a gap and find a hole. It's getting predictable. I would agree with that. So maybe that's something they're working on. But then on the 3rd down play, they threw a pass to Adonai Mitchell. It was supposed to be the pylon. I thought it was a late throw. It was an out route for the receiver, who's a great route runner, and A.D. Mitchell. It was a little bit late and ended up getting knocked down. Then the 4th down play, I love the play. Here on the Eyes on Texas multi, I love the play. It was a play action with a motion. And then it was a throw out to JT Sanders in the flat by himself out there. And all he needs is a block from Jordan Whittington, and it's going to be a walk-in touchdown. But one of the very few times you'll see it, Jordan Whittington got beat by the DB, didn't get the block, and the DB not only beat Jordan Whittington, he then tackled JT Sanders short of the goal line. That's just a good defensive play. So there's kind of a mixed bag, Mike, that there's execution, which I'm sure is what Sark's talking about. There's some play calling stuff that maybe gets predictable. And there's also good defensive plays when the defense doesn't have to worry about the deep ball and can just pin their ears back, especially when you put Byron Murphy in there and go to those tight packages. The defense, they're just going to go wherever Byron Murphy is. That's going to be the hole. And he can only block one guy. Everybody else kind of comes off his hip pad and rolls into the hole. So it's a mixed bag. But in the end of the day, if you're 120th in red zone, high red zone scoring touchdowns, at some point, Mike, you just got to kick field goals, right? You just got to take your 3 points. And you get to these games here, whether it's on the road the next 2 weeks or this game with K-State, I'm fine with some field goals, the way your defense is playing.
Yeah, with your defense playing as well as it is, that's a point taken. But I think all of this comes down to Texas not trusting their ability to just go get 3 yards in the run game.
Yeah.
They have to get creative. They have to go Savion Red. They have to go fly motion. They have to get JT Sanders in the flat off of different looks. Because they can't just line up and have their center guard just go mash people. And so Jake Majors isn't the biggest guy in the world. He's played really well. He's been an excellent center for Texas. He's overachieved his recruiting profile and has been a really good player for the Longhorns. But I think one of the times that you kind of, miss a bigger, stronger center is 3rd and goal on the 2-yard line, where you're not able to just go move a defensive tackle or a nose tackle out of there. Texas can't push. For example, they're not going to organize their mass in a way where they're going to be able to overpower the team in front of them. And that makes Sark have to go into his bag a little bit more and maybe call some stuff that when it doesn't work, it looks really dumb. Because when it doesn't work, you're just like, why didn't you just hand the ball off and go score a touchdown? I don't think he thinks they can. And so far this season, they've proven that they can't. To me, that's been one of the bigger surprises of this year, is that this offensive line hasn't been more dominant than it has been in those short yardage goal-to-go situations.
Mike, as we wrap up our first quarter, Longhorns win at 35-6. They're number 6 in the country in the coaches poll, number 7 in the AP. They're right where they want to be with 4 to play. Is it one of those things where it is what it is, and you start kicking some field goals, or because if they fix that, every other metric. I know there's still the secondary issues as far as that goes, but that certainly was better on Saturday against Keaton Slovis. Are you of the belief that it is what it is at this point? Just know what your DNA is and take your points when you get a chance. Quit trying to be stubborn. Or do you think this is fixable?
I think it's fixable. And I think if you're Sark and you put together this football team and you have the goals that you have, you just go with your dudes, right? I mean, if you can't score on goal-to-goal situations with JT Sanders, Gunnar Helm, Jonathan Brooks, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier, DJ Campbell, all those guys, right? That's why you get this team. Like you're not doing this to kick field goals. You're trying to go score touchdowns and put your foot on some people's throats. And I think if you're Sark, you just hope that once that breaks, like once they have 2 or 3 drives in a row, maybe in the red zone where they score, all of a sudden that becomes contagious. But I am of the opinion that you go down swinging. I can understand if he starts kicking some field goals in situations he normally wouldn't, especially with the way your defense is playing, to your point.
Yeah. And it's funny. We have the cut. I don't know if you can find it in time, Nolan, but maybe we'll insert it here, but in our post edit. But Sark was asked today, do you use the book? Remember Tom Herman was famous for the binder, right? We go to the binder, we look at the book or whatever it says. And Sark kind of snickered at that today and said, yeah, I know about the book, but the last time I checked, Jay Hartzell and Chris Del Conte didn't hire the book. They hired Steve Sarkisian to be their head coach. So there's still a lot of gut feel things that go on for him. I know Longhorn fans are getting frustrated with his gut at this point. He's getting frustrated with his team because they're really good. They're too talented. They got too many weapons to be this inefficient inside the 5-yard line. So I think they're all kind of looking at each other going, guys, what are we doing here? We got to be better. If they can, goals are still out there. But I will say this, and we'll talk about it more in our third quarter. We're talking K-State. If they don't beat K-State, I can sit here right now on this Monday record and comes out on Tuesday and say I would imagine the reason they lose it is that they didn't execute well in the red zone and either were stopped and had to kick field goals. And that the other big issue I see with Texas right now is their 2-minute defense. If you look at their 2-minute defense at the end of the Oklahoma game, end of the Alabama game, even end of the first half against Alabama, even against Houston last week, their red zone or their 2-minute defense isn't very good. These are things they have to rectify. I think they're really good in most other phases of the game, complementary football, and we'll talk about that coming up, how good Texas is. But right now, those are the biggest issues, and if they can even be a little bit better in those phases, I think they're going to be hard to beat here the rest of the way. Favored by 5 over Kansas State. All right, our first quarter is in the books. It's brought to you by our friend Dr. Greg Eckert and his irrefutable research-based brain vault technology. It's more than a mouthpiece. It's an orthotic. It's a mouth guard that is a proven for young athletes to play hard but play safe by minimizing the risk of concussions. It's absolutely there. It's at brainvault.com. You can go in and get yourself fitted for the Brain Vault technology. It is Dr. Greg Eckert, who is my dentist, and you can see my pretty smile. He's restored my teeth here after 50 years, and I have a brand new smile through him, and he can do that for you as well and be your dentist here in Austin, Texas. But also he's partnered for the last 10 years with Drew Pittman, who is an NFL agent, and for the last 8 years, over 100 of his clients, Drew's clients, have been wearing the Brain Vault technology with no concussions reported for 8 years. It's a shock absorber essentially for your mouth. It aligns your jaw position, strengthens your neck muscles. It's an orthotic or a mouth guard. It's designed just for and fitted for your mouth and your jawline. And it has absolutely proven to work. And now teams and young athletes all over Texas, parents all over Texas are getting their kids fitted for the Brain Vault because it allows you to play hard but play safe with the Brain Vault technology. All you have to do is go to brainvault.com and you can read about the research-based information there, how it's been found to work and proven to work by the research. But in the end of the day, it's about the results that matter to you. If you have a youngster playing lacrosse or rugby or football, obviously, or cheerleading, any collision sports, soccer, for crying out loud, get to brainvault.com. They're a great partner of ours, brought you the first quarter, and we appreciate Dr. Greg Eckert. Second quarter time, delivered by the Good Times and Incredible Scratch Food and Comfort Food at Hayes City Store and Ice House, absolute destination location in Driftwood, Texas. All right, Mike, let's shift gears. We move on from the BYU victory and look at the big picture. Longhorns are 6 in the latest coaches poll, 7 in the latest AP poll. They are going to be looking like everybody will at the college football playoff rankings, will come out for the first time tonight. You know, if you're watching this on a Tuesday, it's going to be out. We record on a Monday, but it's going to be out. And, Longhorns in a pretty good spot right now. They're no longer, Mike, the number one or highest ranked one-loss team. Oregon has now jumped them in the AP poll. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, coming up with the college football playoff committee. But they're still in a good spot with one loss with a month to play.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a great spot. They wanted to play for a championship. That was the goal going into the year. They can win out and play for a Big 12 championship. If you win the Big 12, avenge your loss against Oklahoma, you'd have a win against a really good Kansas State team, a really good win against a good Oklahoma team, and then a win on the road against an Alabama team that may or may not win the SEC. And so I think if you do that, one of those teams is going to lose in front of you, right? Like, one of Ohio State and Michigan has to lose. And then I just think one of the Pac-12 teams or Florida State, one of those teams is going to lose. I think if you're Texas, you have to essentially believe that you're in control of your destiny. If you win out and you're 12-1 and you have that kind of logo on your helmet, Texas most likely is not getting left out of a college football playoff scenario unless there's 4 undefeated conference champions out there.
Yeah, and that would become the big debate. I think I agree with you, Mike. Let's hear Sark on this today. He was asked about his first time, obviously, with them coming out this week. Somebody asked him on Monday about the rankings, and you'll hear him here say a little early, but then he expands on it and thinks they have a pretty good resume and a pretty good football team. Here's Sark on the big picture for the Longhorns with the month of November to go.
So I think we got a pretty good football team, and I think that we're a very versatile team. I think the fact that we started our backup quarterback against a 5-2 team and won 35-6. And so we get another opportunity this weekend to play with our backup quarterback. And so, not every team out there has had to endure some of the things that we've had to. And if they had to play with their backup, how would they play? But I think it speaks to the type of team that we have. I'd argue we have the best win in the country right now. The fact that we go into Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and beat a team that was 52-1 in the previous 53 games of us going in there. And I hear so much about how tough the SEC is, but I haven't seen any of those teams go into Alabama and win either. So I feel pretty good about our team. And I think over time, this whole thing will play itself out. So we got to focus on what we need to do Saturday and play our best football.
All right, Mike, interesting comment there. Would you agree with Sark that they have the best win in the country, the win at Alabama? That's better than any team has as far as a road win and a quality win in 2023?
I think it's up there. I mean, Washington's against Oregon could be put in that style as well. I don't know if the Alabama team that Texas beat is the Alabama team that's playing right now. The Longhorns got them at the right time of the year, it looks like. I mean, we were all ready to write the Crimson Tide off, right? Like Nick Saban losing his fastball, all that kind of stuff. And now they're maybe a Georgia win in the SEC championship away from maybe getting a rematch against Texas if both teams went out. And so I think for Texas, Sark's exactly right at the end there. They have an argument against anybody in the country if it's a one-loss situation where there's not 4 undefeated conference championships or champions. So if you're Texas, you go make a statement on Saturday, you beat Kansas State, you control what you can control and win out. I think the chips fall where you want them to fall if you're a Texas fan.
I agree. Now there is, and again, the puzzle begins tomorrow, right? And usually when it comes out for the first time, or tonight if you're watching this on a Tuesday, it's the borders. It's really just the initial thought of what's happened. And I do think the committee, whether we can agree or disagree with the final decisions every year, does a pretty good job of letting it play out and rewarding it. Like what comes out this week is the level of accomplishment to this point, right? It doesn't mean it can't flip around. It's what you've done to now. And that's going to change between now and the end of November. We know that. So, I expect to see, Georgia #1 based on #1 in the AP poll for like 30 straight weeks now. And their impressive win over Florida. I expect to see Michigan too. They've got a scandal they're dealing with right now coming off their bye week. I expect to see Ohio State and Florida State probably 3-4. That's just my guess.
I would be so disappointed. I would be so disappointed. If Georgia is 1, I'm going to throw a fit.
And who should it be in your mind?
I think it should be Washington.
Okay.
I think it should be Ohio State. Like they have wins against real caliber opponents. Georgia's best win is Kentucky. And I know it's impossible to wipe. I know that like the Men in Black kind of you put the buzzer in front of somebody's face. Like it's impossible to wipe away what Georgia's done. But if Georgia goes undefeated and wins the SEC, they're going to end up in the top 4. I would have Georgia at 5. I'd have it Ohio State, Washington, Florida State. I'm forgetting it's Michigan and then Georgia probably. I think it's just one of those like, is it the most deserving or the most dominant? Michigan's probably been the most dominant. Georgia's obviously been the most dominant for the last 3 years. I'd rather go with the most deserving. But I always get in the argument with the AP poll voters.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I wouldn't disagree with you at all to what you just said. I think that I'm going with what I think it's going to be, but you're right. They very well could go on level of accomplishment to this point. That's what I just said. And I refuted myself with my belief, but you're right. I mean, if you're going level of performance to now, it probably is Ohio State. They've beaten Notre Dame. They've beaten Wisconsin on the road. They've beaten Penn State, who was a top 10 team. They've got 3 really quality victories. Washington undefeated. They've looked a little skittish the last couple of weeks, but they did beat Oregon. And you mentioned Florida State. Florida State, they're the team in the ACC. And that's the scenario, big picture for Texas where, I don't know that they control their own destiny. If Florida State wins out, if Georgia wins out, and whoever wins Ohio State, Michigan, now you're looking at the 4 spot. Who's that going to be? Who gets it over one loss? And that's where that Texas win over Alabama. And I agree with you that this isn't the Alabama that Texas played, but I don't think that matters in the perception of the country. That's still Alabama. No one else has beaten them, and the Longhorns beat them by 10 in their place. I think Sark's pretty right on that. I don't know that they'll nuance it as much as that big, when it gets to the point. And so, the Washington win was at home against Oregon, and then they've kind of scuffled. That's the good part of this debate. But you're right. All you can do if you're Sark is keep winning and winning your games. And this week becomes very, very difficult. Let's hear Sark in our second quarter, brought to you by Haines City Store and Ice House, talking about, the one thing he said today that was pretty clear. And I will say this, having covered the Sark news conference today, Mike, he was he was intense today. Sometimes Sark's in a joke, chippy mood, fun mood. He'll take some shots. I just felt like he was really, focused and intense today. Like we're here to November. He's still pissed off about the red zone. He likes where his team is. He knows he's dealing with a backup quarterback, but I think he likes where they are, and he just needs them to take that. Can they take that next leap? Here's Sark with the question about room to grow. Room to grow, because the one thing he said today is what he's excited about is they're 7-1. They're right where they want to be with 4 to play, tied with 4 other teams in the Big 12, and they still haven't played their best football in his opinion. He still think there's a ceiling that they have not reached. Here's Sark on still getting better into the month of November.
Defensively, I think we're 3rd in the country on 3rd down right now. I think we're top 10, if not top 5 in red zone defense. And so, all right, where can we improve? How do we eliminate some of the explosive pass plays that we've been giving up down the field? I think offensively, we've kind of rectified where we were at early in the year where we weren't great on 3rd down. I think we've improved there. I think we are playing efficient offensive football between the 20s. But we got to finish these drives, and I said to you guys Saturday, I would be lying if I didn't say I wasn't frustrated, because that changes the whole complexion of a game. When the score starts to go a certain way, now you're starting to make a team one-dimensional. Now you can rush the passer different defensively. So when I've referenced complementary football, it's all those phases adding up together. How can the offense help the defense play their style in which they want to do? How can the defense help the offense, creating turnovers, giving them a short field? How can the offense then in turn help the defense again, turn those turnovers into points, and not turning the ball over and giving them a short field? So it all ties together. But again, as coaches, I don't want to say you're never satisfied, but man, we try to chase perfection every day. And when it's not perfect, my job as a coach is to try to help them, show them a path and an avenue of where and how close they are to perfection and how we're going to try to get there.
All right, still room to grow, Mike, and in a good spot. And that's, I thought what I was encouraged by Sark today. I think he's kind of pushing the gas here with his team. He's really challenging them. You heard him say earlier, I push these guys every day, these coaches every day. We're close. We're close. We just got to kick that door in, as old Bum Phillips would say, and start finishing these drives and not be our own worst enemy in some of these games and let some teams hang around.
And he knows this week is the test. Like, he knows he needs the best from this team, that if they turn the ball over, if they don't convert in the red zone, that Kansas State is the team left that can really punish them. They can play their B game and beat TCU. They can play their B game and play Texas Tech. They cannot play their B game and beat Kansas State. Like, they're going to have to play Alabama, Oklahoma style of football against this Wildcat team. He knows it. He's pushing those right buttons. I think Sark is the most enjoyable coach to listen to at Texas in a long time. The way he talks about football, his demeanor about it, his straightforwardness about it. I enjoy his press conferences on a weekly basis and kind of what he talks about and the introspection and the honesty he provides on a Monday or Tuesday.
I don't disagree. And I think you said it right. That's great analysis right there. He understands how important this game is, how close they are, but this could derail the whole thing. Because once you lost to Oklahoma, you can't afford another toast stub, obviously, especially at home. In the Oklahoma game, you lost the game because of turnovers. You lost the game because of red zone, lack of red zone production, period. And your 2-minute defense wasn't good, but it wouldn't have been there if you had executed in the red zone better. And I think he understands that. And he's just so frustrated that it's still not rectified and it's still not fixed. And BYU was able to stone them a couple of times. All right, that's our second quarter, delivered by the incredible Scratch Food and Amazing Times at Hayes City Store and Ice House. Great place, even as it cools off. They've got the ice house outside and inside where you can get away from the cold temperatures if they're there. And the ice house, they drop down the partitions, and it's very nice out there, heaters and whatnot. Great food. It's really about the experience every time, watching sports, big parties. We were out there a couple weeks ago, and there were 6 picnic tables of people celebrating something. I'm not even sure, graduation or an anniversary or something, birthday. That's what Hayes City Store is all about. They're right there in Driftwood, Texas. between Wimberley and Kyle, just outside of Driftwood and Dripping Springs. Great people, ready to serve you. Travis and Tamara Tyndall. They have, when the night music and the weather's great, like it's going to be this weekend, getting out watching Texas, live music on their stage 6 nights a week on the picnic tables under the canopy of oak trees. It's a little bit of everything at Hayes City Store and Ice House, famous for their scratch Texas comfort food, wood-fired pizzas, house-ground burgers, chicken fried steak to die for, truck stop enchiladas, full bar, great margaritas, 53 beers on tap. It's everything at Hayes City Store and Ice House. A destination of location if there ever was one. Make it your destination soon. If you do, you'll be back again and again to Hayes City Store and Ice House. All right, time for halftime. We'll get to that third quarter. And as Mike just alluded to, it's going to be a drill down on K-State. This team, the Big 12, where it stands. It's good stuff right now in the month of November. But halftime brought to you by our buddy Richard Strever and his team at One Source Gas of Central Texas. We'll tell you about them coming up. But a little bit different halftime. First, Nolan Hogan, our digital producer. Do we have some? I know Bijan Robinson scored his first rushing touchdown of his career in an Atlanta loss to Tennessee on Sunday. But give us the rundown of Longhorn players shining in the National Football League, as happens every Sunday.
This week, the list is a little bit longer than usual. We got Brendan Schooler with his usual 2 solo tackles.
Nice.
Andrew Beck had himself a rushing touchdown this week as well to join Bijan with their first rushing touchdowns of the season.
Remember, Andrew had the Andrew had the kick return for touchdown too, so he's got 2 this year, which is incredible. And yeah, that hurt my fantasy team. I have Damian Pierce, and they handed it to the fullback, up the middle, and didn't give it to my back. But either way, happy for Andrew Beck to get the touchdown for the Texans against Carolina.
For Miami, Deshaun Elliott versus New England this week, 6 tackles, 4 solo, and a pass breakup. We mentioned Bijan Robinson versus Tennessee this week, 11 carries, 62 yards, and a touchdown. Jordan Hicks continues his solid season, 8 tackles, 4 solo versus Green Bay, playing for Minnesota. Quandre Diggs had 9 tackles, and 5 of them were solo versus the Cleveland Browns in their win. Justin Tucker versus Arizona was 1 for 2 on field goals with a long of a 48. So I'm assuming the one he missed was a little bit longer. And he was 4 for 4 on extra points. Keontae Ingram got some action against the Baltimore Ravens, 2 carries, 9 yards, and a reception for 7. Charles Omenihu had another solid game versus Denver, 5 tackles, 3 solo, a half a sack, and a quarterback hit. PJ Locke for Denver in that game against Kansas City had 3 solo tackles. The Chicago Bears, Texas backfield with Deontay Foreman and Roshan Johnson, 9 carries for Deontay, 34 yards. Roshan had himself 6 carries for 21, and Cameron Dicker capped off the evening with a 3 for 3 field goal night and a 3 for 3 extra point night against the Bears.
Yeah, against the Bears on Sunday Night Football. Very nice, Nolan. Good stuff right there. How about this, Mike? Arthur Smith is the coach of I know you don't cover the NFL that much, but the Titans wore the Houston Oilers uniforms, which disgusted me to my core as an Oiler fan. I can't handle it. Derrick Henry with the Derrick. They even had it on the field, the big oral Derrick in Tennessee. Sacrilegious. Oh, terrible. But in that game, the Falcons are playing in Tennessee against the Titans, not the Oilers. And in a crucial situation late, Arthur Smith in the red zone, speaking of red zone issues, has Bijan Robinson off the field. And he's got Jonnu Smith as a tight end in the backfield, and he ends up throwing a pass.
And he has not only Jonnu Smith throwing the ball, he has Kyle Pitts blocking for him.
Oh, man. Why is Bijan Robinson off the field in a critical moment? You took him 7th overall to watch a critical moment on the road in the red zone. I don't get it. Sometimes you talk about this, Mike, all the time. Coaches overthink a simple game all too often.
That is absolutely true. I did see a tweet where, the Falcons had 3 tight ends on the field, and the one they drafted in the top 10 is blocking while their top 10 draft pick on the running back is on the sideline. So I'm every week in the NFL, there's some decisions where you're like, how did you become at the top of your profession? And how do you have all the details and know all of this stuff and then make that decision? It's just incredible to me. But I've never been, on the sideline. I don't know how fast it happens, but that's a fireable offense, I'd imagine.
And you lost the game by inside a touchdown. I don't know, man. And remember, Arthur Smith used to be the offensive coordinator in Tennessee. That's before he got the job, when he was the one that kind of resurrected Ryan Tannehill's career, and Derrick Henry had his best years, and he got the Atlanta job. But that was kind of a boneheaded thing. All right, real quick, in our halftime, brought to you by One Source Gas, wanted to play this for you. Any guess on who Longhorn right tackle Christian Jones believes is the toughest player on the Texas team? This goes when you get the players' availability, Mike, and Everybody's looking for a question for their media package, their news package on the news. Somebody asked Christian Jones, who's the toughest player on the team. Do you have a guess or two, or do you already know the answer?
I don't know the answer. The guy I would want to not fight the most would be Byron Murphy or DJ Campbell.
I agree with that. DJ Campbell or Byron Murphy. Nolan Hogan, do you have a guess? You already know it because I sent you the audio, but who's the guy you would least like to fight? I could throw Anthony Hill in there, I think, having seen him. Gosh, who's the guy, the big kid out of New Jersey, Bergen Catholic, the big monster. Some big boys, but do you have a guess, no?
I would not want to fight Jalen Ford. That would not be a fun one.
That's a good one, too. Okay, well, pretty much any of these guys. But let's hear this. This is Christian Jones, who's the right tackle for Texas, who's playing at a really high level, by the way.
Yes,
Back for a sixth year. He's playing great. This is a very thoughtful answer that I think is going to surprise a lot of our Eyes on Texas multicast viewers of who he thinks is the toughest player in the Texas locker room.
Charles Wright, number one. Man, he works. He's a grinder. Every single day he's in there, and it's easy to like work hard when you're the star guy, when you're like the number one guy, you know, and everyone's like patting you on your back and like you're getting the positive and negative like reinforcements, you know. But you really see what someone's made of when they come to work every single day and they do it for the love and the passion of it, and they know their role and they do their job to their best extent. So whatever that is, Charles is always up there running, man. I mean, giving a look on scout team, being a linebacker, like singling the play sometimes, like getting a couple reps in, staying extra, man. I mean, like it's 45, 50 minutes after practice and he's walking in with his shoulder pads, sweat dripping. So like, I mean, it's that's like a testament to him. And if we had a whole team of hims, we would be undefeated. And yeah, that's definitely one.
That's an incredible answer.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, Charles Wright. He is probably the biggest Longhorn on the Longhorn football team. Like, just grew up loving Texas, was an Iowa State commit, flipped. I think he got his offer because Quinn Ewers decommitted and went to Ohio State.
That's true. That's correct.
And so, committed really late in that cycle, stuck with it through a coaching change, and a guy who didn't even offer him, knows he's not going to get on the field, has 5 stars all around him, doesn't transfer, doesn't complain, apparently works his tail off just like he did at Austin High. Really cool kid, good kid, and apparently turned into an awesome young man.
And that's one of those ones I love that he said that, but what a thoughtful teammate too.
Yeah.
That'll resonate at the combine when Christian Jones gets to the combine. That's just it's a likable kid who's playing really well. And, speaking of a fourth string quarterback and noticing what a fourth string quarterback is doing, that's good awareness right there. I like me some Christian Jones, and certainly props to Austin's own and loyal forever, the Austin High Maroon, our man Charles Wright, getting a shout out on the Eyes on Texas multicast. Good job.
A baller, by the way, at his high school. He was, he was absolutely awesome as a Maroon. Awesome.
And that's, that Sark did talk about that. I will say this, we didn't have time, we didn't play it, but Sark went on for a while about Maalik Murphy, Mike, in the same way, just that he could have transferred when Quinn Ewers transferred in. He could have transferred when Arch transferred in or committed. Here he is, but he Sark made it very clear. He said it wasn't about NIL. I know, whatever that he ended up getting, he said, I sat in the exit meeting with Maalik Murphy and he wanted to be here. He just wanted a chance to compete and know he'd get an opportunity. And he loves being a part of this team, a part of Texas. We talked about that with Jonathan Brooks. Charles Wright, as you said, was an Iowa State commitment. He could be starting at Iowa State with all the issues they're having. Who knows? Yet he's here busting his butt for the Longhorns. That's another reason there's optimism that this month of November can be something, because this team does feel like they play for one another. They believe in one another, and have players like Christian Jones and Charles Wright on it. So that's your second half, brought to you by One Source Gas, Texas compressed gas leader. My buddy Richard Strever, who's the best, man. I mean, there's a reason their company has grown from little old One Source Gas into now this growing monster that's taken over San Marcos and all over Austin and into San Antonio. They just do it better. They do it better. They understand you as your business owner. You need beer taps for your compressed gas and your CO2. You need the nitrogen, oxygen, propane for your medical buildings and your doctor's offices, dental offices. You need it. You need it on time. You need it hassle-free. That's what One Source Gas is all the time. 12 years now understand that exceptional customer service is the key. So if you're a bar or restaurant owner, dental office, veterinary clinic, have a business that needs compressed gas on the daily or weekly, whatever it might be, and you are looking for a better and an upgrade, it's your compressed gas provider, call our friends or go to the website, onesourcegasatx.com. Spell out the word one, please. Onesourcegasatx.com. No numbers. Or call them 214-8484. That's 512-214-8484 or onesourcegasatx.com. One of our great presenting and founding partners. They bring us the halftime segment. All right, Mike, let's dive into our third quarter. It's brought to you by Carlos Carrion, the Texas Mortgage Guy, thetexasmortgageguy.com. Third quarter is interesting. Man, we didn't know what to say was going to happen in the Big 12. The Big 12, what we know, Mike, is it's always unpredictable. And here we are into the month of November. 5 teams, count them, 5 teams, all at 4-1, sitting in a 5-way tie for first place atop the Big 12. Let's run through them. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, K-State, and Iowa State are all 4-1. Oklahoma State will play Oklahoma this weekend. Texas will play Kansas State. And Iowa State, the other surprising 4-1 team in the conference, will host Kansas, who just knocked off Oklahoma. Not much more the Big 12 and Brett Yormark could ask for after a pretty miserable September for the conference. Looks like November is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't know how many of those teams that you listed are great, but they're definitely pesky and could put a wrench in this plan. I mean, a week or two ago, we thought this was Oklahoma, Texas, and no one else, and Kansas State has really risen to the top. I give these guys a lot of grief, but Mike Gundy and Matt Campbell have coached their tail off this year. Both of those teams are overachieving, playing really well. Ollie Gordon's a stud at Oklahoma State and running back. Maybe he'll get into the portal and somebody can go get that dude since Oklahoma State doesn't do it.
Fort Worth, right?
Yeah, South Grand Prairie. That because Oklahoma State doesn't do NIL, so I'd imagine somebody's able to come in there and scoop that kid up in the portal if they want to. Maybe he'll be a Colorado Buffalo next year or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this thing's going to go to the end. I still believe it's going to be Oklahoma versus Texas in the Big 12 championship game. But you're right about Brett Yormark celebrating. This thing looked done and dusted, and now all of a sudden it's a lot of fun and something that everybody's got to watch. And there's stakes involved because there's 2 college football playoff contenders in the Big 12, and just one more loss kind of ends that for maybe both teams, honestly.
Yeah, they can knock each other off here on the way to the finish line. Well, coming up in our final 4 quarters, final 4 stories in our fourth quarter, I want to talk to you about the final Bedlam game. Maybe ever, Mike. Maybe ever. We don't know. We'll talk about that coming up. It looks to me like something's up with Dylan Gabriel. I'm not sure. And that loss to Kansas on Saturday, I'll talk to you about that. And your thought, Ollie Gordon is almost 300 yards rushing in each of the last 3 games for Oklahoma State. And they're, coming back from the dead of September when they just looked awful. Remember, Oklahoma State lost to South Alabama like 30-3 or something. I mean, they got trounced at home by South Alabama out of the Sun Belt. So this thing was not trending in a good direction, but they beat K-State, and now here they are winning games. And Ollie Gordon, the running back, is playing right there with Jonathan Brooks, is the best back in the Big 12 right now. But let's talk about Texas and Kansas State because it is now the focus. We'll certainly do our drill down and super preview coming up in our second episode of the week on Thursday. That'll come out on Friday morning or Friday afternoon. Let's hear Sark initial thoughts on the Big 12 first. Let's hear Sark talking about the conference. And is he surprised that after what we saw in September that here it is this competitive with a month to play?
The start of the year, a couple of teams in our league lost some games that maybe people didn't think they were going to lose and whatnot. And some other teams won some games in other conferences. Well, all of a sudden now, as the league is starting to bear itself out, we're starting to find out that I think our league is probably a little stronger than people gave it credit for in early September. And there's a lot of teams playing really good football. And maybe some of these other leagues aren't quite as strong as people were giving them credit for at the start of the year. And so I think that's why it's important to watch the entire body of work throughout a season. But our league is tough. I've said it all along. We've got really good coaches in this league. They get their teams to play hard and tough. They're very good schematically. They're great game planners, and you've got to be on your toes, week in and week out as a coach in this league. But you also got to make sure that your team is ready to play because, as we're finding out, there's a lot of teams that have an opportunity to compete for a conference championship in November, and that doesn't surprise me. They're really good teams in our league.
Mike, what stands out to me there is the coaching. I mean, that's one thing, right? I mean, they don't recruit like the SEC does. We know that. But Chris Kleiman's a really good coach. Mike Gundy's, maybe a Hall of Fame coach one day, even though he's unorthodox and kind of weird sometimes, but he can really coach football. And, what we're seeing is the signs of well-coached teams who just keep improving their teams and making the adjustments. And Matt Campbell would get a tip of the cap with that too at Iowa State. Just really good coaches in this conference.
Yeah, they punch above their weight. They have to be really good pound for pound coaches. I think defensively, they don't have the 5-star defensive linemen and the all speed, secondary guys. So they have to schematically figure out a way to stop offenses. And the Big 12's been kind of a breeding ground of modern offenses, modern defenses for a long time, going back to the air raid, to Gary Patterson's 4-2-5, to Matt Campbell's 3-3-5 kind of flyover defense that it's been coined as. And so, I think that's one of my favorite parts about the Big 12 is it's not a reactionary league. It's a pioneering league that has coaches that are willing to take chances because they're trying to go get that bigger and bigger job, right, in a lot of different cases. And so you're able to kind of just do some stuff and experiment and not have the pressure of going 11-1 every single year. And so to me, Texas fans get upset with me when I kind of make fun of Longhorn fans for how they treat the Big 12 and talk about the Big 12. But I think it's a great conference. It's a fun conference. And while it may not be the most talented conference in the world, it's always been, pretty even and pretty fun to watch on a week-to-week basis.
I agree with you. That's well said. Pioneering is a great way to put it. And I think what you said to start with, punch above your weight. I mean, you don't have the talent that some of the others do. You just don't have the body, the depth of talent. So you got to coach around it. And you got to, it's like what we talk about with Sark with his secondary. The problem or your red zone. Now you got to coach around it. Now you kind of know what you are. And I think there's a lot of coaches in this league that have built and found the ability to do that over the years, without a doubt. All right, let's hear Sark no more now, specifically about K-State. They are one of the 4-1 teams. They are 6-2 overall. They've maybe been the best team in the conference in the month of October. Here's Sark knowing what they're running into with this Wildcat bunch at 11 a.m. on Saturday.
As far as Kansas State goes, obviously this is a really hot team right now. They've been playing as good as anybody in the country in all three phases for the last 2 to 3 weeks. I think it's really important that we focus on us and what we need to do. That the details and the level of physicality in which we play the game are at the forefront of what we do. I do believe our best football is still ahead of us, and that part is exciting to me. And we're going to need to play complementary football Saturday against a very good, well-coached football team in Kansas State. So it's an exciting weekend. Obviously, we've got the big noon kickoff here with Fox. They're coming to do their show. I think it's a great opportunity for our students, for our fans, to really show up here at DKR and have an impact on the ball game. We've all got work to do. I think everybody, myself included, could have been better last week, and we all need to perform better this Saturday at 11 a.m.
All right, Mike. Looks like about 58 degrees in the morning for your tailgates, about 78 degrees for kickoff. Couldn't ask for much more. Maybe even cooler than that, probably in the low 70s when they kick this game off on Saturday, 11 o'clock. I know Longhorn fans don't like the 11 a.m. game, but I kind of predicted this on Saturday during the game because they had already announced the Bedlam game was in the middle of the day. They already had the night game picked out. So Fox was waiting on this game, the Big Noon Crew. That's their big game of the week, and they bring their whole Urban Meyer and all those guys. So Longhorn's going to get the center of the national attention on Fox, and should be a good game. Coming up on our Thursday recording, Mike, and our Friday drop of our second episode of this week, we will really drill down on K-State and their two-headed monster at quarterback. One stat that really sticks out, though, Mike, about K-State, just to start this, they're number one in the Big 12 in third down conversions. They're 55% on third down in the conference. And in the last 3 weeks, they're converting about 67% of their third downs, and they're holding their opponents to like 28%. They're just getting off the field and then not giving the ball up. This is a Chris Kleiman team that's improving. Those numbers, those things are pretty staggering. Texas is very good on third down, too, both ways. This is a heck of a matchup, and you just said it a little bit ago in our second quarter that this needs to be an Oklahoma level, Alabama level performance for Texas if they're going to get a win here.
Sorry, I'm laughing because SMU's head coach is texting me about if they released the full schedule of 24 through 30, as if he didn't know, or so. I don't know. It's very funny. It's funny. Coaches are such in their bubble that they have no idea what's happening around them. SMU is joining the ACC, and they announced the opponent schedules from 24 to 30, and the SMU head coach only thought it was from 24 and is learning this as we're recording this podcast. That's hilarious to me.
So funny.
Kansas State has outscored their last opponents 82-3. They just beat a team that was within, a couple of yards of tying the game and sending it to overtime, in a Houston team against Texas. They beat them 41-0 and shut them out for like the first time this century or something like that. Like Kansas State is a bunch of monsters, and they pull you into fights. They take you into quicksand, and they challenge you in a way that Texas historically hasn't been all that great, right? Like, the knock on the Texas team is that they're finesse and that they're superstars and that, it's that whole like 3-star culture, 5-star talent type deal. Texas lately has been really good against Kansas State. They're going to have to beat a version of the Wildcats that is going to show us a lot about the toughness and physicality of this Longhorn football team.
Well said. Well said. And I do know that the Longhorns have won 8 of the last 10, and Sark's never lost to Chris Kleiman, even with a bad team year one. Tom Herman kind of turned the tide of that K-State rivalry because, just being more physical. You have to be. You can't be finesse and beat that team. You got to be physical. But this is maybe Chris Kleiman's best team at this point after winning the Big 12 a year ago, kind of out of nowhere. A lot of those guys are back, and they're getting their sea legs after, remember, they lost to Missouri on a field goal, 60-yard field goal at the gun at Missouri, and they lost on a Friday night in a weird game at Stillwater. Longhorn fans know what playing at Stillwater at night is all about. So those are their 2 losses. And as you said, the month of October, they've been dominant. So this is a hell of a ball game. Longhorn's a 5-point favorite. I think this is a 1-score kind of game, maybe even a end of game kind of game for the Longhorns. That's why the red zone and all the critical things we've talked about are so important. All right, coming up Thursday, be looking forward on Friday. We're going to record our deep dive on K-State and the Longhorn matchup. We'll hear more from Sark on the 2-headed monster at quarterback. Avery Johnson's a true freshman who has joined Will Howard. So they've got 2 guys they use at QB. Third down, they're great. Defense, Chris Kleiman, championship coach. So looking forward to that. But that's going to wrap up our third quarter here. Brought to you by our friend Carlos Carrion, the Texas Mortgage Guy. Find him online. Where would you find him? At thetexasmortgageguy.com. Don't forget the at the beginning of that. Send you to the wrong place. He is born and raised in Austinite, diehard Longhorn fan. And he's been doing the mortgage game thing for, 10 years now, almost a decade. And he's not here to just provide you with a quote like anybody could do. Gosh, a computer can do that, algorithm. He's your guide to help you solve problems and strategize important decisions in your life, like a refi of your house or buying a home for the first time, selling a home, a rental property. I mean, he is the best in all of this. And all you got to do is talk to him. And go to thetexasmortgageguy.com. It's also on social media, Facebook. Just search Carlos Carrion, Carreon, or on Twitter at Carlos Carrion 36, the number 36, Carlos Carrion with 2 R's. He is thetexasmortgageguy.com. And as I say, when you're in the market for this, you want someone that you can talk football with, talk some Longhorns, talk Austin. He's lifelong, great dude, and just makes sense to work with him. He watches the EOT religiously, so he'll be able to talk to you about everything we're talking about. You're going to love Carlos Carrion, the TexasMortgageGuy.com. All right, let's drop into our fourth quarter. It's brought to you by Dr. Greg Eckert, of course, and my brand new smile, courtesy of Dr. Eckert and his team there in North Central Austin. Mike, final 4 quarters, what stands out to you right now in college football? I'm going to say go lead off and just say for the Oklahoma State game for the final time. I can't wait to watch this game. There's a rivalry, and then there's this one. It kind of reminds you of Texas and Texas A&M back, 10, 11 years ago. This could be the last one. And there's animosity both ways. It's an in-state rivalry. Mike Gundy played quarterback at Oak State. Oklahoma has dominated the rivalry. They won 15 of the last 18. But, man, that Stillwater scene for this final bedlam is going to be something to see on Saturday.
I can't believe it's not the last game of the regular season for these two, near Thanksgiving. It feels like that should have been a tradition. We've talked about this a few times on this show. Like I am somebody who enjoys the traditions and the rivalry and the prestige and the regionalism of this sport. And we're losing it. It's becoming more of a national sport, a money-making sport, a TV executive sport. And to me, I don't think it's overall a net good. I think there are some good things about it, but I think overall it is a net negative. I don't want to live in a world where college football doesn't have Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State or Washington versus Washington State or Texas versus Texas A&M or any of those games, right? And so to me, it's just kind of a sad kind of swan song, but, I hope the good guys win. And by that, I mean Oklahoma State, to get that last one, because it's not the Cowboys that aren't going to play this game moving forward. It's going to be the Sooners because they don't need the money.
Both sides have said we don't have any interest. There's hard feelings, obviously. There's years and years and years of tradition. I know we've talked about that with Texas playing TCU and Texas Tech and Baylor for the last time here as conference members this year. It's tough. It really is. I mean, I'm a pragmatist, so I understand it. But I'm with you. I don't like it. I don't have a good answer for it, and it's just it's unfortunate, but it's the way of college football right now. Mike, what stands out for you as far as our Final Four questions, things around college football that we haven't touched on here on our hour or so of the EOT on a Monday?
We kind of talked about it, but I find the Michigan thing to be hilarious and interesting in the middle of the season. Like, I mean, they're arguably the most dominant, best team in college football, and their coach didn't coach for the first 3 games, and now he may get in more trouble for sending guys to steal signs from Indiana and Rutgers and and stuff like that. I just think it's very funny. Yeah, I just think, I think what's always interesting about the college football year is in the early part of October, we're like, man, there's 14 teams that can win a national championship. How are we possibly going to whittle it down? This is why we need a 12-team playoff. We don't know who the best teams are. And then by this time of the year, around November 1st, we're down to about 6 teams. And the last 3 or 4 weeks will take us down to 4, and we'll go from there. And so it's just been a fun college football season. I think it's been cool that the Pac-12 has made it a coast to coast football season in a way that the last few haven't. It feels like the last few seasons have been about the Southeast and the Midwest. And this year, with Texas playing well, Oklahoma playing well again, the West Coast being back on it, it feels like a real kind of 50 state situation now.
I would agree. As for the Michigan thing, I'll be interested because I think the Big Ten dodged a bullet that Michigan wasn't playing this weekend, right? He had their bye week. I think that was important for them that they didn't have to play a game and have Jim Harbaugh have a press conference, because I think the thing that came out late last week that really opened my eyes with the reports that they were giving, signs maybe to Clemson teams at South Carolina, who was playing Clemson and LSU Clemson and Tennessee at the end of last year. Maybe that was something that this Connor Stallions was a part of too, to help maybe derail those teams to the college football playoff. Who knows? I mean, that's what the investigation's about. I just feel like the Big Ten has to have a statement here, because again, I think 2 things have to happen for Michigan. They need some protection here because they go on to win this whole thing, and it's going to be tainted. One of the things I've argued on my show, Mike, is I think the Big Ten should say, you know what, we're unilaterally going to institute helmet to helmet sideline communication here the rest of the way. I know that would be dramatic, but at the same time, it protects Michigan. All this information that they may have gathered over time that they have, the future opponents and all of that comes into question. Are they going to use that? Can they use that? How do you prevent it? The helmet communication that we've talked about that should have been allowed a long time ago. Coaches have voted against it. Schools. I think the Big Ten has to get out in front of this thing, because whatever it is, I don't know how big it is. Is it an anthill or is it a mountain? But at the same time, this is a team that can win the national championship. And if they do, and then it comes out, well, we see this all the time in the NCAA. It's not good for your champion. And you also, if you're the Tony Petitti, the commissioner, you got to protect the other teams who are now going, wait a second, what's going on here? These guys have been stealing our signs. They've been using it, and they've been dominant since they've been doing it. I mean, those are how the timelines light up, that really when this all began is when they began their rise to the top of the college football world, and they've been dominant this year. So, and that stuff at the end of last year with South Carolina and Clemson and Tennessee kind of really takes it like, hold on, let's tap the brakes on this deal. I don't wonder if the Big Ten doesn't have a statement. I'm surprised they didn't have something today. But we'll see. Michigan's going to play this weekend. They're maybe the best team in the country. To me, as a Houston Astros fan, it's almost like they uncovered the trash can gate during the year.
Yeah.
And like when you can do something about it, like when you can actually put a stop to it and then do something. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it is a bizarre story. I don't know if we've ever seen like this during the season. And for Jim Harbaugh, this is my 3rd one, Mike, in our Final Four in our 4th quarter here on the Eyes on Texas multicast. This is starting to feel a lot more like Pete Carroll's last year at USC after all the success that, could Jim Harbaugh jump off to the NFL, however this goes? And teams like the Chicago Bears might be interested. Remember, Pete Carroll at the end of his run at USC kind of knew the NCAA was digging around what was going on with the Reggie Bush stuff, and he just jumped off to the Seattle Seahawks, and the rest is history at that point.
Where does PJ Fleck's comment stand with y'all now that we know this Michigan?
Yeah. Well, I think all that needs to be looked into. I mean, their numbers are gaudy, and it is impressive how great they've been, and it does feel like that something's up. And at the same time, as Mike said, and a lot of coaches have said, just having the sign or knowing doesn't matter. But what I think stands out, Mike, and you can correct me from your reading of all of this, the guy was going to games, recording the entire game, and then going back home and being able to watch it and decode it. And then during the game against that opponent, he was on the sidelines, talking to coordinators and helping them decode what was happening in real time, checking to the right play, checking out of bad plays. To me, that's something the NCAA, the Big Ten, has to take very, very seriously.
Yeah, it's an interesting deal, right? It's like a Goodwill Hunting situation. Anytime, I think college football is the best sport in the world because, like, randomly in the middle of the season, there's a story about manifestos. It's like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? I think, to me, the most interesting part of this story has been that half the coaches I talk to say it's a huge deal and can change the outcome of games and shouldn't be a lot. And a lot of other coaches are just like, yeah, dude, it happens. Like, get good at it. Like, like if you're better at it than other people, then that's an advantage. Just like any other, if you're good at trick plays or whatever. And so I had TCU coaches tell me that they thought something was up with Michigan, that, it's just like, there's going to be 3 or 4 times a game where you call the perfect defense for an offensive play, but like 12 times, like, how often can you get it that right? And so I do know some coaches, like the PJ Fleck thing. I know some coaches were suspicious. And so to me, what's been really interesting as somebody who didn't play football at that level and hasn't coached at that level is how guys at the college level, at head coaches in college, assistant coaches in college, can disagree so much on the value of knowing the other signs, because it does come into like, yeah, I can know what the offense is running, but I got to let my players know that they're running it. Then they have to go execute it and make the tackle and still stop it. And so I'd imagine when it's a coin flip football game, it can be a huge difference. Maybe if you're Indiana, it doesn't make any difference at all.
Yeah, you don't have the horses to do it, right? You're just not as good. But yeah, that's what I'll say. The Clemson and South Carolina stuff, along with Tennessee, that stands out. And then what you said about TCU, that they were aware of it and they had a month to prepare for it before that national semifinal game, and they won the ball game. And they had dummy signs and they had planned for it. But week to week in college football, you just don't have time for that. You don't have time to be changing your signs all the time with young people. And that's why, again, it reminds me of baseball, Mike, in that baseball was very slow to react with steroids, and kind of everybody knew it was going on. And, we would have debates about how much it helped. You still got to hit the baseball or whatnot, but you knew it helped. I mean, you saw home runs flying out of parks and stuff. And baseball was slow to react. Baseball was slow to react to the technology scandals that led to the Astros situation that was going on. And NCAA, we know what they are. They're slow to react. They're behind the times on this with the communication. So we got guys holding up poster boards with supermodels and whatnot, instead of just being able to talk to your quarterback from the sidelines. And we'll see where that goes. We have to follow it, but
or even just have a wristband. Like,
yeah,
it's easier to get plays in high school. Like Lake Travis has an easier time getting plays into Michigan. That's absurd. Like, it's just dumb. Yeah. And they're $1 billion business. Like, just put the damn things in their helmet.
Yeah, it's dumb. Just like in the 80s and 90s in baseball, they weren't even testing for steroids, yet it was illegal. That's dumb. I mean, that's pretty obvious. That's just not very smart. And, we're doing that with college football right now, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and Michigan's at the center of that whole conversation. So obviously we'll follow that. The one thing that did come out, Wall Street Journal today did report that Michigan pulled a new contract off the table, rescinded a contract that they had made to Jim Harbaugh that would have made him the highest paid coach in the Big Ten and one of the highest paid coaches in the country, pending this investigation. So that's now rescinded. So at least Michigan's paying attention to that. They don't want to get locked into something and have to be on the hook for something super long term with Jim Harbaugh, depending on what happens here with this NCAA investigation. Fascinating story. And Mike, to wrap up our fourth quarter, just a phenomenal weekend of college football. There's great games across it, and obviously the Big 12, taking big time center stage with, the Longhorns and K-State. 4-1 teams playing this weekend. Bedlam in Texas and K-State, plus Iowa State's playing a rising Kansas team that just upset Oklahoma. I wanted to mention on the Oklahoma State thing, one thing I will mention to you, last thing we'll do, is in the loss to Kansas, if you weren't paying attention, before their 2-minute drive to try to go beat Kansas, Dylan Gabriel had thrown the ball 12 times. And they had run the ball 45 or 50 times against Kansas. And I understand maybe that was a strategy. And then I watched Dylan Gabriel on that 2-minute drive, 1-minute drive. He doesn't look right, Mike. He doesn't look like he's got the zip on his ball that he did when we saw him in the Cotton Bowl against Texas, where he was razor sharp and was laser focused. There's something up when you're playing a team on the road and you're struggling, but you're running the ball. Like 5-1 with an offense that's built around a quarterback. We know their running game and their running backs are not the engine of that offense. I would keep an eye on that. I think there might be something up with Dillon Gabriel because he didn't look right to me in that game. Nothing against Kansas, pulling the huge upset, but he just doesn't look like the Dillon Gabriel we saw 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a Jeff Lebby called offense either, right? Like that doesn't seem like what he would do with his full horses and everybody being healthy. Definitely one to watch because, I mean, as Texas learned, when Dillon Gabriel is playing at a really high level, Oklahoma is one of the best teams in the country. If he's not, I think Oklahoma is a pretty average Big 12 team.
Well said. Well said, as usual. By Mike Craven, the senior writer at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. I'm Aaron Hogan, and that is it for another episode of the Eyes on Texas multicast. Our eyes on fully affixed on all things Texas football. Looking forward to one of the games of the year. Looking forward to the Alabama game when it happened, and then the aftermath, the Oklahoma game, and now here comes another huge game, ranked matchup. Kansas State at number 25, Texas at number 6 or 7, depending on the poll you're looking at. I want to thank our digital producer, Nolan Hogan, our executive producer, Griffin Hogan, for their great work again. Thanks again to our founding partners, Carlos Carrion, thetexasmortgageguy.com, Hayes City Store and Ice House in Driftwood, Texas. Also, One Source Gas of Central Texas. Dr. Greg Eckert and his Brain Vault technology at MouthGuard that allows you to play hard but play safe. And, of course, we are powered by our presenting sponsor at Grande Equipment. That's Grande Equipment, locally owned, independent, but worldwide equipment company that's been serving your heavy equipment needs since 2004. Online at grandeequipment.com. Mike, where are you traveling to this week? I know we'll do another episode coming up on Thursday into Friday that'll come out ahead of the weekend and ahead of the big game on Saturday morning. But where will you be going this week?
My colleague Carter Yates will be in Austin for the Texas-Kansas State game. I was saying that first so people don't kill me for what they're about to hear. I will be in North Texas for UTSA versus North Texas. This may shock a lot of people listening to this podcast. Probably don't watch a lot of G5 football. That is the best rivalry at the G5 level in the state of Texas. Those two schools, for whatever reason, absolutely hate each other. I went to UTSA. We hate North Texas. I have to pretend to like North Texas because I'm an unbiased journalist. And on Saturday, I will pretend to do that in Denton, America.
Go Mean Green. Go Mean Green.
Yeah.
We were up there just a couple weeks ago for my daughter. She goes to school there. She's
Oh,
graduate in December with her undergrad. So, yeah, man. I know you're UTSA. She's Mean Green. I'm looking forward to that. You're a road runner. But good stuff. Nolan, awesome. Great job as always with the sound bites and the highlights. Griffin will edit it and get this thing out just as soon as he can tomorrow. It is the multicast that keeps you on top of all things Texas football. Available to watch weekly on Dave Campbell's Texas Football and the Horn Austin YouTube channels. Also available for download through iTunes and Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. Mike, appreciate it, my friend. Great stuff. We'll talk again on Thursday and drop a new one on Friday.
Yes, sir. Talk to you then.
Welcome, brother.